Okay, let's dive in. Imagine this, right? While you're fast asleep tonight, something pretty bizarre is happening on your face.
Uh,
We're talking about these tiny eight-legged creatures crawling out of your pores, maybe even having a bit of a party. Sounds surprising, doesn't it?
it really does sound surprising. But,
Blech.
based on the article we're looking at today, it's actually completely normal. Pretty much every adult has them.
Wow.
Yeah, this article gives us a real look at these things called Demodex mites. They're microscopic invertebrates just sharing our skin.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to unpack what this article tells us. Who are these little guys? What's their deal? Especially the nighttime stuff.
Exactly. And, importantly, why should you care? Or maybe why you shouldn't worry too much. For most of us, anyway.
Right. Let's figure that out.
We've gone through the source, pulled out the really interesting bits, the things that might make you think about your face a little differently.
Okay, so first up, who are these tiny tenants? The article says they're invertebrates, no backbone, and they are seriously microscopic.
Oh, yeah, incredibly small. Like, way smaller than a pinpoint, maybe 0.15 to 0.4 millimeters. You definitely need a microscope.
And where do they like to hang out?
Mostly around the hair follicles on your face. Deep down in the pores, that's their spot.
And they're eating something in there.
Right, they feed on the oily stuff. The sebum your skin produces inside those follicles. That's their food source.
Got it. Okay, which leads us to their secret life. This is where it gets kind of wild, I think. The article really emphasizes they're nocturnal.
Totally. They only come out when it's dark, basically when we're asleep.
So what are they doing out there?
Well, this is apparently when the action happens. One of the researchers quoted Alejandra Parati. She calls it their happy party time.
Party time. On my face.
Sort of, yeah. They emerge, they maybe visit other pores, check out the neighborhood, just walking around on your skin while you're completely unaware.
That is such a strange image. Little eight-legged commuters on my forehead.
I know. And then, come morning, when you wake up, they just retreat back inside the pores, tucked away again.
Wow. They've got quite the routine.
It's a pretty amazing rhythm. And what's really fascinating is how the article talks about the relationship. It's not like an infestation or something bad by default. No, it describes it more like a surprising symbiosis, a two-way street.
Symbiosis. Okay, how does that work? Sounds like we're just providing the housing and the food. What do we get?
Well, the idea put forward in the article is they might act like a tiny cleanup crew, like miniature vacuums, it says.
Miniature vacuums.
Yeah, helping clear out some of that oily buildup, the gunk from inside the pores.
Huh. Little microscopic janitors tidying up. Okay, and what do they get from us besides the oil buffet?
This part is really unexpected. They seem to need melatonin.
Melatonin, like the sleep hormone.
Exactly. We produce it, including in our skin, apparently. And for these mites, the source says it's vital energy. It even calls them microscopic vampires, needing our melatonin.
Microscopic vampires, drawing power from our sleep.
Yeah, that's wild.
Isn't it? And there's another adaptation mentioned. They hate sunlight. UV rays.
Why is that?
Apparently, UV light wrecks their DNA pretty easily. So staying hidden during the day isn't just about timing their parties, it's crucial for their survival.
It just shows how perfectly suited they are to this very specific environment, doesn't it? Our faces.
Absolutely. And speaking of how common they are, the article is really clear. Almost every single adult has them.
Almost every adult. Seriously.
Yeah.
That's way more than I thought.
Yeah. And the density can be surprising too. Up to 5 mites per square centimeter on the face is considered typical.
5 per square centimeter, but thank goodness you can't actually see them.
Right. Impossible with the naked eye. And for most people, this whole relationship, this symbiosis, it's completely silent. Unseen. You have them, they do their thing, you never know, no problem. Okay, that's reassuring. But the article also talks about when things go wrong, right? When the balance shifts. Demodecosis.
Exactly. Demodecosis. That's basically when the mite population explodes.
Yeah.
An overgrowth.
And why does that happen? Do the mites just get aggressive?
Not exactly. The article suggests it's usually less about the mites changing and more about the host's immune response. People with weakened immune systems are more vulnerable.
Like who?
Like older adults or people undergoing treatments like chemotherapy. Their bodies might react differently. The issue seems to be an inflammatory response to the mites.
Okay. And maybe linked to bacteria on the mites too?
Potentially, yeah. The inflammation might be triggered or worsened by bacteria they carry.
Didn't the article have that interesting comparison about wild animals versus domestic ones?
Oh, right. Yeah, the idea that wild animals don't seem to have these mite problems, but domestic pets sometimes do.
So the hypothesis is,
Well, the thought is maybe something about how humans have changed our environment, our lifestyle, maybe even a genetic mutation has made our immune systems, more likely to overreact in certain cases,
yeah.
compared to how things might have been way back.
Huh. That's a really interesting angle. So if this balance does get thrown off, what would someone notice? What are the signs of this inflammation?
The source lists things that sound like general skin irritation, really. Rosacea flare-ups, maybe acne getting worse, unusual dryness, or flaking skin.
And these would pop up where the mites hang out, the oily spots.
Exactly. Cheeks, forehead, around the nose, eyebrows, where oil tends to accumulate.
Okay. And it mentioned eye problems specifically.
Yes, that seemed quite important. Mites around the eyelashes can cause inflammation right on the eyelid margin. It's called blepharitis sometimes.
And that waxy stuff you might see.
That could be a mix of their eggs and their waste products. Pretty unpleasant sounding.
Yeah.
And it can lead to issues like dry eyes, really bad itching, even eyelashes falling out, or getting styes over and over.
Yikes. Okay, so that shows the problems can be quite specific if the population near the eyes gets too high.
Definitely.
So if someone is having persistent problems like that, how do doctors check if it's actually these Demodex mites causing it and, what can be done?
Well, diagnosis seems pretty straightforward for a specialist. A dermatologist might use a bit of tape on the skin or gently scrape a sample, then look under a microscope.
Okay.
And an eye doctor, they can often spot signs, like that waxy buildup around the eyelashes, just during a regular eye exam.
Right. And what's the main advice from the source for people just finding out about this, especially if they don't have symptoms?
The big message is, don't panic. Seriously. The article really stresses that most healthy adults have these mites without ever knowing, and that's fine. That's how it should be.
So no trying to scrub them off or anything.
Definitely not. Trying to pick at your skin or using really harsh scrubs could actually cause more harm than the mites ever would. The guidance is clear. If you think you have symptoms, go see a doctor. Don't self-diagnose or self-treat aggressively.
Makes sense. What about just general prevention? Keeping things balanced for healthy skin.
Yeah, the article gives some practical tips there. Just regular, good hygiene before bed is key. Using a gentle cleanser helps remove the extra oil and debris they might feed on.
And for the eyes specifically?
Making sure you take off all your eye makeup, false lashes too, every single night. Don't give them extra places to hang out or stuff to eat.
Okay. Anything else for skincare?
Well, for people prone to acne, it mentions that using a topical retinoid, sometimes maybe just once or twice a week, in moderation, could help manage oil production.
But not too much washing.
Right. Counterintuitively, it warns against overwashing or using things that really strip your skin bare. That can actually damage your skin's natural barrier, which might, ironically, make things worse or lead to overgrowth.
Ah, okay. So don't disrupt the natural balance too much.
Exactly. And it also mentioned getting enough sleep. Apparently, that can help regulate sebum production. Less food for the mites maybe helps keep their numbers in check naturally.
Good sleep helps everything, it seems.
Pretty much. And if someone is diagnosed with Demodex, what's the treatment approach?
It's focused on getting the mite numbers back down to a normal level, not trying to wipe them out completely. That's probably not even possible.
Right. So doctors might prescribe topical creams or even oral medication like ivermectin to reduce the population.
Well, then for the eye issues.
There's progress there too. The article noted that in 2023, the FDA actually approved specific medicated eye drops just for that Demodex-related eyelid inflammation. So targeted treatments are becoming available.
That's good news. It shows that even though they're normal, the problems they can cause are taken seriously.
Absolutely.
Now, the article takes this really fascinating turn towards the end, looking at the mite's long-term future. This research team, parasites again, they suggest these ancient companions might be heading for extinction.
Yeah, it's based on their 2022 research. It's a pretty mind-bending idea. These mites have been with humans for, well, possibly centuries, passed down mostly from mothers to babies.
Right.
But the latest findings suggest that their very specialized, very sheltered life on us might be leading them down a path of what they call a long-term evolutionary death.
Evolutionary death. How does living the good life on our faces lead to that? Seems counterintuitive.
It does. But the theory is about something called genome erosion. Because their life is so stable, constant temperature, steady food supply, no predators, no real competition, they're basically losing genes over time.
Losing genes. Because they don't need them anymore.
Kind of, yeah. There are no strong selective pressures forcing them to maintain a complex genetic toolkit. If a gene isn't essential for survival in that specific niche, it can eventually just get lost over generations.
Wow. And there was another factor mentioned too about genetics.
Right, because they're mainly passed between close relatives like mother to child. There's not much mixing of genes from different populations. This leads to a lack of genetic diversity. They become sort of evolutionarily inbred, as the article puts it.
So less adaptability, fewer necessary genes.
Exactly. Put those together, the genome erosion and the limited gene pool, and the prediction is that they'll just keep losing essential functions encoded in their DNA until eventually they might not be able to survive at all. They could just disappear.
That is quite a potential fate for our little face friends.
Isn't it? Now, the article is quick to point out this is likely over a very, very long evolutionary timescale.
Right.
We don't know how long. And it's not necessarily presented as a good or bad thing.
Right. Humans would probably just adapt if they disappeared.
Presumably.
Yeah.
And it circles back to that earlier point from Parati. In cases of demodicosis, the mites themselves weren't really the villains. It was the person's immune system reacting abnormally. So maybe we should think of them less as pests and more as, well, companions on a long journey.
Companions. It really does shift your perspective, thinking of them that way. Not just bugs, but part of this ancient, maybe slowly fading evolutionary story playing out right here on us. Okay, so let's just quickly wrap up the key things we learned from digging into this article. These tiny Demodex mites, super common, mostly harmless. They're our little nocturnal buddies living in our pores.
Yeah, there seems to be this delicate balance, this symbiosis. They might do a bit of cleaning, we provide food and energy like that melatonin, and for almost everyone, it just works, goes totally unnoticed.
And while they can cause problems like demodicosis, especially if your immune system is compromised, the advice for most people is clear. Don't stress about them.
Right. Good basic skin hygiene is usually enough. Gentle cleansing, removing makeup, but definitely don't go overboard trying to eliminate them if you're healthy. Leave them be unless you actually have symptoms, and then see a doctor.
And then there's that whole evolutionary angle, the idea that these companions, passed down for ages, might be slowly disappearing, losing their genes because life on us is, in a way, too easy.
It's a really profound thought, isn't it? Makes you consider all the invisible life happening around us and even on us.
Definitely. Thinking about these tiny creatures, part of our human story for who knows how long, potentially fading away because their very genes are eroding. What does that tell us about symbiosis, about evolution?
Yeah, and about all the unseen connections that shape our world. It's definitely something to mull over maybe next time you're settling down for the night, knowing who else might be waking up.